Hi there everyone and welcome to another live stream from me. I'm Aonia, if you've not heard my voice before, and I'm here with Orael, who is my co-producer for Lusternia. Say hello.
Hey everybody, how's it going? We're excited to be here and let you know what's going on.
Yeah, so we've got, what we're basically going to do today is we're going to take you through our major projects for Lusternia, both our current major project and the project that will follow after that. And then we're going to take you through some of our minor projects as well, just to give you some updates, to give you an idea of what we're working on. This obviously doesn't encompass absolutely everything we're working on, because there's quite a few things that are being done by our volunteers in your communes and cities and that sort of level, and things that are being built that we can't talk about. And this is really just to cover with you the major development projects that are going on right now. And the first one of those that we're going to talk to you about is Enzone. So you've probably heard us talk about Enzone before. Basically, this is sort of a supplement to the demigod changes that we put in earlier this year. And Orael, do you want to talk a little bit about sort of our general aim with Enzone and, the sort of thing we're trying to achieve?
Yeah, basically, excuse me. What we're trying to achieve with this is just a more exciting, more engaging end gameplay. One where you can go in and you have to really work at it to figure it out and achieve all your goals there. You're gonna have to go in and solve the problems and, I don't know, do much more than just let your auto basher run to defeat it. So the whole goal is something that's enjoyable, something that's fun, and something that you can get lots of practice with and lots of fun with. So.
Yeah, and one of the other things that we have sort of teased a little bit, we haven't talked about extensively. Obviously, this is we've got areas in Lusternia that do function as PvE areas, but this is one of the first times, really, apart from the astral plane, where we very specifically designed a PvE area. And I think something that's really important for you to know is that this entire area is very much, whilst the PvE aspect is its function, the whole thing is dripping in lore that I'm so excited to give to you. I'm not going to tell you any details, but what I will tell you is that it expands upon and reveals a very significant part of the histories. Everyone who's working on it, and it's really very much the entire team working on the building side of it, are really excited. And we are talking. If you're having trouble hearing us, then try refreshing your stream. That helps sometimes. But yeah, so we're very, very excited about the concept of what we're giving you, both on a meta level in terms of how it functions, and also in terms of its in-character setup. One of the things that we're doing sort of in terms of its functionality is that we want to make sure that it's not somewhere that you go once and you achieve things and you don't go again, or you go once and you get your honors lines and the success of having completed something, and then you really just go back in there to grind some essence or some XP. So one of the things we're doing is we're making sure there's a system that's part of the area that gives you a reason beyond XP and gold or whatever it might be to keep going back there. And that's something that we felt very strongly that we wanted to give you as an extra level of reason to go. Now, the biggest question, of course, is when do you get to go and see whatever this area may be? So we are hoping and expecting and aiming to release Enzone this year. We do have a schedule on our end that we're trying to work to. We're choosing not to reveal that because if we don't manage to meet it, we don't want to, promise something we can't give. That's something that's really important to both Orael and I, is to make sure, when we promise you something, it's something we really expect to deliver. And part of that is making sure that this is the most awesome it could be before we give it out to you. Enzone is a project that has suffered the most from our pandemic-related delays. That's largely due to the fact that so many people are working on it, and all of us individually have obviously suffered effects from the pandemic, both big and small. And we've been prioritising looking after our people, but also balancing that with moving things forward. So that's a sort of a general overview. And we can now take some questions specifically about Enzone. We cannot promise you that we're going to answer all of them, but ask away if you have any questions about things we've just said, or sort of questions about Enzone in general. Throw them in the chat now, and we will see what we can and can't answer. So first of all, we've got a question already from Nelras. Yeah, we can tell you that system shouldn't directly have an effect on PvP balance. I think that's fair to say.
Very minor. If anything, it's to be very, very minor. Pretty much non-existent. I don't think. I'm hesitant to say there won't be any effect. Just because you never know how things interact or whatever. But it's not. The goal is to have any effect on PvP. It's mostly a PvE area. It's going to be, to answer Malaris's question, it isn't type of area. It's going to be, to begin with, a specific area, but it's a system that will let us expand on it and add more areas and stuff. So,
and that's something we've built from the ground up. Like, even in terms of the documentation we're keeping on the back end, we're making sure we've got documentation both for this specific Enzone and also for sort of the Enzone system as a whole. So our next question is, what are the risks of death as a mostly fully artifacted person? Do you want to take that one?
Hi. It's one of the things, if you're not paying attention or whatever, it's going to be very easy for you to die.
And one of the things that we're doing when we get to the testing stage, we want to make sure, whilst we've said before, we don't want player testing, because we want the whole thing to be a surprise for you. We will be doing very extensive testing on the admin end. We're all very excited to get to pretend to be players again. One of the things we want to make sure we do is that we test the area as a person who's fully artifacted and really powerful, and also as a person who's a brand new demigod and hasn't really got much. So a whole flurry of questions. I think most of them are for you. Are there going to be anti-competition or anti-choke pointing mechanics?
I'm not sure what that means, to be honest.
Yeah. Okay, can you expand, Lightpour, on what you're going for there? Nepenthe, I am not going to answer what the lore of the area is mostly related to. I will say that the histories does contain all of Elders, Vernals, and Mortal races. So it could well be one of them. It could be none of them.
As far as group sizes, I think this first area we're doing will be probably just kind of designed for any group size, right? Like, we'll try to make it adjust to the size of the group in the place, I think, to begin with. But in the future, we may have areas that are very much group dependent.
I've got a question that's come to me separately. So I have a question about whether Enzone is going to have anything that might be inaccessible to blind players. I'm going to actually talk a bit about that later, because I want to talk about our work on accessibility. I can tell you there will not be anything sort of Ascii puzzle wise in Enzone that will affect you. And we're working very hard to ensure that even if we do have something that we add that might be an issue like that, that we funnel it through our inbuilt screen reader system, so you've got a version that will display that will make sense. We've done that a lot with Ascii art and things that exist in in the game right now. There might be cats. Okay, so we've got a follow-up. That's a Lightball's got a follow-up to that question.
So, I mean, it's the whole point of Enzones is it's intended to be a group working together to get through it. So, I mean, it's not so much that people will be competing for it as if instead, like, they'll have to work together to get through it, is the general goal.
We are going to, we are thinking a lot about how it's going to reset as an area, and how that's all going to function, and sort of the spawning of the different mobs that you'll be fighting. And we do want to make sure that it's not, you know, one group goes in there and it gets cleared out for 6 hours and no one else can do it. There's a balance between that and stopping it from being somewhere where you just sit too infinitely. But that is definitely something that we're thinking about. Yes, the stream is being recorded and it will be uploaded at a later date. Thank you for the reminder. This time I was the one responsible for pressing start record, so I made sure to make sure that happened. In terms of that lore question, I would say that if you have a deeper knowledge of lore, you might get more out of certain things, but I wouldn't say you don't expect to need to be, you know, a knowledge champion in order to make sense of it. The whole point is that I think with any lore, that it should be accessible to everyone. With any area, anything like that, you absolutely will, you know, have people who will get more out of it if they, you know, if it's a bit of lore that they're really into, that sort of thing. So yes, no, I think is what I'm trying to say. But it is related to something in the core histories. It's not related to any sort of obscure thing elsewhere within the game. Are there any more questions on that sort of thing? If they're not, then what I'll do is I'll move on to describing and announcing what our next project is. Okay. All right. So as a sort of general overview, oh, well done. Get one more question in there. Okay. Yeah, so it is group focused. One of the things we're going to do in testing is really have a look at, you know, how many people you can do the area with, and if there's a tipping point. We're aiming for a sort of mid-sized group with this one generally. In the future, we might do areas that we've talked about doing end zones for solo players. We've talked about doing end zones that are, like Abet's saying, for, you know, the big astral bashing groups that you get, which I know are very fun. So yeah, I think we're aiming for groups of sort of 5 or so. That's a very vague thing though, because obviously no two groups are the same. But yeah, in general, it should be tuned so that it can vary a little bit. So compare the length and difficulty of questing an end zone to Icewind, and does the questing need to be done in a group? You are working on the presumption that there are quests in the end zone area, and there may well not be. Not every area has to have a quest in it necessarily. I know that's something that Astara previously was very strong on. It's not something that I necessarily hold to. Okay.
And as far as how it compares to Astral, I don't know if that question was answered. It doesn't compare to Astral Bashing. That's all I'll say for that.
Yeah, Astral is very different in a number of ways. Okay, so in one of the things that we are trying to do with our major projects is sort of make it clear that realistically, with the size of our development team, we're going to produce something between 2 and 3 major development projects a year. Obviously, that's vague because no two projects are the same. Different projects have different hiccups. Sometimes a global pandemic happens. But generally, we're looking at 2 to 3 major projects a year. So what we're going to announce to you now is what the project that will follow Enzone is going to be. And we're expecting this project to take quite a long time. And you'll understand why in a moment. Orael, would you like to do the honours of announcing our next project?
The next big project, drumroll please, will be a really hard, intricate look into the economy and working on the economy. I know a lot of you have been concerned about commodities and how much they're coming to the system, and how there's an appearance that we're running out of commodities. And we've always said that, yeah, we know that there's more going out than going in at the moment. But that wasn't a question we had to answer at that point in time. But now the time is to answer the question. So we'll be taking a really good hard look at it. And we plan on doing a really intricate look into the details of it. So it's going to take a while. It's going to take a couple months just for us to kind of detail the how it exactly works and everything. So there are
one of the problems that our economy system has at the moment, and one of the reasons it fails, is that it's a lot of modular things added onto each other without a sort of global top-down overarching goal for how the economy should work, an idea for how the general flow of things should occur. And that's really what we want to do this time. And the reason it's going to take quite a long time is that we want to make sure we work out what is the purpose of Lusternia's economy, what are the, I don't quite want to say rules that we want to meet, but that sort of thing. And that involves looking at almost anything that could touch the economy. So it does include commodities and commodity generation. It includes government styles, because lots of those have effects. It includes holding villages, things like that, trade skills. You can just keep going and going and going. We don't have any ideas for it already, because this is our next project, not our project right now. We have seen a lot of feedback from people that we will be taking into account. We are aware of the 8,000 word epic, and we'll start, when we get to that project, start looking at gathering information about how things are now. I don't know if there's anything else you wanted to say on that, Orael?
No, just, it's something. The big thing will be, it's going to take a lot of time, I think, because we want to make sure we do it in depth and do it right.
Yeah, I mean, our expectation is, obviously we don't quite know when we're going to start this. We do expect it to take several months just to work out what the problems are and what our goals are for that structure. So we will keep you updated as we go through that development process. Obviously, there's some things there's a limit to how much information we can give in advance, and we do want to try and answer some questions now, but obviously that's very speculative. So if you do have any questions, go for it, but we can't tell you specifics right now beyond, a sort of general how we want to approach it. I will tell you, we definitely don't want to make things super scarce. The whole point is to ensure that you can do the things that you want to do, but that there has to be some sort of flow in there. We equally don't want to make commodities too available, because that just sort of goes back to the opposite problem.
Yeah. If you guys have suggestions for books about virtual economies, I'll take all of them. I've already been watching videos and stuff. So if you have suggestions, feel free to message or email or whatever.
So there's a question of, do we plan on looking at making metal comms easier to generate so we don't have to kill loyals to get ores? Definitely commodity generation is one of the things we'll be looking at. I am aware there's an imbalance in the generation of basically every commodity. And one of the imbalances is that you have to attack loyal mobs in order to get certain comms, whereas you don't with others. There's more, is it more sheep than cows or more cows than sheep? That sort of thing. All of that is stuff we want to look at. No, Keep Your Leave will not be a new currency. In terms of a direction we're leaning, I don't know that we have a direction that we're leaning right now in terms of a top-down view, other than that, you know, it should be effectively a loop in that has some vague sort of balance. It's a terrible way of putting it. Maybe you can put it better.
Yeah, I think the big thing to know is that we really have. I mean, we're announcing this is what we're going to do, but we haven't really started it at all. So our first step is to kind of look and see how it works currently, and then go for solutions from that point. So I don't know, you know, active or passive or top down or, you know, any of that stuff. I have no idea which way we'll go at this point. I think it's going to depend on what we discover as we dive in. So.
Yeah, and that obviously that's definitely one of the dualities we'll have to consider, of whether we want to push towards just active production or a balance of passive and active, that sort of thing. Will there be new uses for anomalies included in the economy?
Potentially.
Yeah, that's something we could consider.
So, you know, and another thing with the anomalies, as a side note, we could always we left room with time quakes to expand those to use anomalies for other stuff too. Maybe different research branches or expanding what we have currently or whatnot. So we don't necessarily need to go in an economy direction with that. We have other options there.
And that's the thing, that it's a smaller thing. It's much easier to do, to add on to that structure that's already there.
Yeah.
Okay, so just a few last moments to ask any other questions about the economy. I'm sorry, we can't obviously give you more exact answers about that at this time. The really important thing we want you to know is that we are, you know, going to be looking at that. So I've had another question that's come to me separately. I will get to that later, because you'll see I'm actually about to talk about that in a bit. How do we decide on what projects to take on as our major focus? So it's a mixture of things we know we want to do and feedback we've had from the community of problems and concerns that all of you have. We have what we call a star map, which is a list of things we want to tackle at some point, and we'll sort of add to that. And often what will happen is Orael and I will sit down and look at the star map and say, you know, what of these do we think is the next thing we should do? What works best with where we are in the year? Because obviously at different points in the year, different things are happening. And yeah, it's really a mixture.
I mean, from my standpoint, it's a matter of what's going to have what we spend our time on should have a significant impact on the player base, right? Like, I don't want to, if we're doing a big project, we wanted to associate as many people as possible.
Yeah.
So that's kind of one of the things I look at too.
Okay, so unless there's any more, I think, Lani, that's more a question about time quakes rather than economy specifically.
We'll be finishing the defense overhaul eventually.
Okay, so what we're going to move on, there may be a chance, time depending, to ask some more questions at the end. So we'll see how we go. What we're going to do now is we've both got a couple of, I've called them minor projects, but they're really not very small. So I'm not sure why I called them that. And we've both got a couple of each that we're both going to talk about. And so actually, since I've just had that come through as a question, one of the things I want to give you an update on is Ascension. Now, we spoke earlier in the year when Ascension happened about the fact that we do want to revisit and look at the format of Ascension. And I say that very generally because I mean it in a very all-encompassing way. I mean everything from the exact rules and setup of each contest to the contests as a whole, to Ascension's link to our overarching plot, every aspect of Ascension and how it is run and what it means for Lusternia as a whole. Now, I don't have a lot to say about that right now. Again, this is very early on. It's more that we wanted to update and let you know that we're now at the point where we have started discussions about Ascension, and we are starting to look at what we think the problems are, and how we're then going to tackle them. You might be thinking, my goodness, Aonia, it's incredibly early to be doing that. But because of the link between Ascension and the year plot, and in terms of the fact that there's quite a lot to discuss here, and it's a really important thing for Lusternia as a whole. That's why we started that this earlier. And it could be a rap battle, who knows? But yeah, the only thing I can say is that it really helped us having it in the summer as well. So the one thing you should not expect is for us to suddenly go, Ascension is in January, because that's not going to happen. So you can assume it will be later on, in whatever format it appears in. So that's one of mine. Orael, do you want to talk about one of yours?
Yeah, the other thing that's been working on, as you guys know, we just recently pushed a big batch of server-side queuing updates, to help with lag reduction, to help improve it in general. There's a Mortal Coder who's been working on all that stuff. That's all his doing. He's continuing to work on that stuff. He actually just gave me an update a little bit ago. He's going to keep working on things like improving ice curing to allow applying wounds while waiting on a limb, improve affliction tracking and the hidden status for ice stuff, and look at toggling things like climb out of pits and kind of making the unknown afflictions curing better than it is right now. There's that topic on the forums. If you guys want to make comments on the forums, I mean, that's being perused. But yeah, so we're still, pushing our work into that to help make it better. And that first batch of changes I think went over pretty well, minus the not being able to sit down ever again bug. But
that's a small
overall it was a very, very good change. So he's doing good work. So he'll keep working at it. And that's where we're at with that.
One of the things to mention with that is that we think it's hopefully made some improvements to lag.
Yeah, it should have. I haven't looked at it specifically, but it should definitely do it. How close to delete Dream Weaving?
I think that's related to your other thing.
Yeah. Oh, go ahead.
Okay, so my second thing is an update about our Inclusivity Project. Now, this time is going to be a bit vague, and I do apologise for that. We are now onto several points that are being worked on a lot behind the scenes and will be released slowly. These are wider reaching concerns that affect more than one thing. And I'm very sorry, I can't really be more specific than that. We will be very explicit about what we've changed and why once things are released. But I don't want to spoil any sort of plot-related things that are occurring, because many of these changes are things we're trying to make sure there's, let's use this opportunity and have some really cool plot for how things are changing. And I'm incredibly excited about what a lot of the volunteers working on this are doing. And I want to be clear that a lot of the changes that you're seeing and the improvements that you're seeing are coming from our volunteers who are working really hard on this project that, whilst I'm leading it, I kind of produced not out of nowhere, obviously, because it comes from very good and very important reasons, but it wasn't in its size on our docket, and our volunteers have been amazing at helping with it. This does include, the one thing I can be more specific on, the ongoing implementation of non-binary gender. There remain some issues with that in terms of, well, there's a lot of them, and a lot of it's just making sure that we've got systems in place in things like emotes and honors lines, and I think honors lines is all done now, and emotes we have a fix, so it's just going through all of the emotes as they get reported and getting them sorted. We do want to open non-binary gender up to mobiles, but we want to make sure it's sorted on the player side and Divine side first, before we then go and add, a whole other dimension to it. Now, one of the things that we've added onto the Inclusivity Project, and you will have seen from this stream, is that we are also working on greater accessibility. Now, obviously, this is relevant in-game in terms of our systems for people using screen readers, which I talked a bit about earlier. But one of the places we're really trying to make improvements is on our platforms that are beyond Lusternia. So here, our social media, our website, things like that. And you will find things like, obviously we've got closed captions here today. We're starting to put alt text on all of our images on Facebook and Twitter, and things like that. This is something we're very much learning about as we go along. So if you ever do have something that you as a user find would be, that you're having a problem with or would be better in a different way, do get in touch with us and let us know, because often we don't know. We have, it's even down to things like the colours we use for things to make sure that they're accessible to people with different levels of colour blindness. And there's, it really takes having someone who knows that sort of experience to help us see where there's a problem, so that we can then fix it. So yeah, that's where we are on that. Yeah, because to be honest, before I started this, I didn't even know there were different kinds of colour blindness. I was only vaguely aware of it. But we have tested several things amidst our team in the Havens to make sure that it can all be readed. Gosh, what has happened to my English today? That it can all be read clearly. In terms of Ascii Art Puzzles, I also don't actually like Ascii art very much. So this actually got improved a while ago. Previously, all of our Ascii art was quite literally printed, I think is the best way to describe it. Now, all of our things like fireworks and things like that go through a function that we have, where you get the ASCII version, and then there is also always a text-only version. I realise text-only is a weird description because ASCII is in itself text, but you will have the ASCII version that looks like a butterfly, and then you will have the sentence, "A firework that resembles a butterfly appears," that sort of thing. In terms of, so that's something we've already done. I'm not going to say we've got every instance of ASCII art in existence. If you do find any that don't have that set up, please report it to us and we'll make sure it gets moved onto a better system. And this doesn't apply to all puzzles and things like that. Some of our puzzles have a screen reader friendly system. We've got a screen reader friendly mastermind. That's the name of the puzzle that I hate. And I know we've worked to do that with other puzzles as they've been added. In terms of going sort of back through all our existing puzzles, we don't currently have, I'd love to do it. We don't currently have the resources to, especially because Puzzle Frog is, people run away screaming from it. So in terms of changes to existing plot or lore, there will be changes to existing plot and lore, inevitably. But we're endeavouring to make sure that those changes make sense, that they're done sensitively to whatever the issue is, that they are done in a way that improves Lusternia in all senses. So we don't want, a lot of the changes we've made thus far have been things that we can just simply change. For example, changing the original name of Epicure's Alley was something we could do that was just a name change. It was very much just cosmetic and wasn't a problem. A lot of the things we're on to now are the things that are more complicated and are the things that are more entrenched or more complicated in their relations. And we're trying to make sure that when we're changing them, we're also making those stories better in every way, as well as ensuring that they make sure that Lusternia is a place where everyone is comfortable. I'm sorry that is very vague, because as I say, I don't want to spoil things, but that's very much our aim and the aim of everyone working on it. So yeah, that's me in terms of inclusivity. Would you like to talk about bugs?
Yeah. The last thing we want to talk about is just that, moving forward, I know like Aonia and the team has done a good job with game bugs recently, having bug parties and all that stuff. But one of my goals, once we finish Enzones up, is to help really start cracking down on the code bugs again. So that's one of our goals, is just to help reduce those and get those down. Yeah, and just kind of take care of it that way. So nothing big, exciting to announce there, but that's one of our goals. I think that's it.
Yeah,
about bug.
Yeah. So we were aiming for about an hour. So we've got 20 minutes left. If any of you have questions that you'd like to ask, this can at this point be about anything. I can't promise we'll answer everything, but we will do our best if we're able to. So how far ahead in time do we actually plan for projects? It's a mixture of both. So I mentioned earlier, we've got our star map, which is the things we'd like to do in the future. And then obviously we're announcing the project after the one we're doing. So it's kind of both. It's not like we can tell you we're doing economy, then this next thing, then this next thing. Because stuff comes up and changes, and but we do have an idea of sort of the directions we want to go in general. So
yeah, I can look at. I can look at the
message. Yeah,
the bug status updates. I can look at that and see it. I thought it did already, but yeah, there should be that configuration. Always message on, and it should message you whether you're online or not online. So if you have that on, it should do it. But I'll double check that it does. That should be easy to do if it doesn't. I don't know if it works on bugs. I think it does. But if it doesn't, I'll make it work on bugs. As far as Envoy reports moving forward, I said our goal is to do it every 4 to 6 months. We just wrapped up some did I finish them in July or August?
Time is strange.
Yeah, I just wrapped up the last set in July or August, so we'll probably look for another round, probably maybe December or January or so, depending on how end zones go and stuff. So, and if something like Climax comes up again, where it's a big game-changing, easy-to-use thing that's murdering people left and right, we can look at changing it outside Envoy reports for sure.
Yeah, I mean, it's not that changes to PvP balance or anything can only be made through Envoy reports. We do step in and change things as and when it's needed. It's more that Envoy reports are a time where we, and by we I mean Orael, really carve out time to focus on those specifically. So if someone thinks that a skill set needs larger changes, is there a correct way to submit that as a report?
I mean, you can always submit like multiple reports when the new round opens up. If you think there's a big problem, you're always welcome to email me what the suggested changes and stuff. I definitely don't want to. Any changes that we're going to make are probably going to be run by the player base first. I know that some people don't like opening up the forums and whatnot, but I think it's best just to be transparent on what changes we're looking at and what changes we're suggesting to the players in general. So that's kind of good to be. What do you think of an idea where we change stats to be less uniform? I'm kind of 50-50 torn on that. I think changing stats to be less uniform, where warriors are the big tanks and bards do tons of damage, but die to 2 hits. I think that makes things more interesting and more fun. But part of the overhaul goal was to make things more uniform. So it's kind of like bouncing back and forth. I don't know if you guys are aware, but I'm definitely a fan of a system where people have to make choices in what they do. Make choices in I'm going to be defensive against fire, but it's going to open up to cold damage or whatever. The kind of thing where I'd rather a system where we choose what you're saying, but then it makes you weak in other areas, rather than everybody just being awesome at everything. Because I think that's a more boring system to play in. So there's definitely good points about things being less uniform overall. So yes, I'm open to ideas that change that. Archery nights will probably not happen in a long time. So I just missed the sarcasm tag there. but yeah, I think less uniform stuff could be a lot of fun.
We were talking earlier about the fact that extends sort of all over the place, in the sense that some classes are better one-on-one than others, and some are better in groups and in different size groups and that sort of thing, and that's always going to be something that makes combat interesting. In terms of using PvP skills or abilities on denizens in Enzone, no, you will not be able to use abilities you couldn't.
Well, in this first system, definitely not. There will be a little bit of stuff you can do in this first round, but part of the fun of the system may be to allow that kind of stuff to happen in the future.
Yeah.
So I don't know. We'll see.
Not as a blanket thing right now.
I mean, and, with the trade-off system, if you don't want to use one thing to lower something else, I think that's part of the goal, right? Like, you can either be average all around, or you can be really good at one thing, but then you're suffering on another end. And I think that's what makes it more interesting, right? Do you want to be okay at everything, or do you want to be really good at one thing and bad at another thing? I don't think that's a problem. So it forces choices, and choices are fun. Bring back Darvelian. Well, are there any other questions or anything?
I mean, there was a question of when do we get to kill off salts, but so real question: have you thought about new skills for some classes or new secondaries? I think we'd always love to, but adding a new skill is a lot of work, which Orael can probably speak to better than I can.
Yeah. It is a ton of work. It's a ton of work to add anything new or to change, even just to change up the existing stuff. It's difficult to do, and I'm not opposed to it. But when you add stuff, then you add new balance problems, new other issues or whatever. So there's no plans for that stuff as of now. But in general, it's a lot of fun.
And that does include trade skills as well. Whilst trade skills obviously may not necessarily have the PvP balance issue, they involve a lot of work on a different side, the treat side. But this is not me promising there will be new trade skills when we look at the economy, but looking at the economy will involve us looking at trade skills. So we will be in that region. In terms of, we discussed Enzone and accessibility of puzzles. Are there puzzles in Enzone? That really depends what you mean by puzzle. And I don't think we're going to go further than that. I know that there is a pervasive player theory that there are puzzles in the, you know, in the sense that you think of in a quest. And there seems to be an obsession with this theory. You'll find out whether it's correct or not. Orcagole does still exist. It's just that they're in a place that only appears at certain times. So,
and don't thank us for the mage trophies. Thank the player report that did it.
Yeah.
I forget who wrote it, but.
In the economy, can we consider looking at high versus low magic parity? Herbs are, yeah, that's sort of the thing that I'm meaning about looking at, because the accessibility of trade skills, both in terms of what magic it requires, what classes can and can't get access to things, that all affects the economy system, because, you know, the number of people that can take, say, Brewmeister affects how available Brewmeister products are. I've possibly picked the worst example, but yes, that is the sort of thing we will be looking at that point. In terms of more Aether Group crafting for existing trade skills, it's sort of inevitable we're going to end up looking at the Aether Group crafting system, but we don't have specific plans right now. And Orcagole may still be there. You'll have to wait and find out if the chateau opens again in the future. So this is one for you then, Orael. Is there any plan to look at the PvP balance of high and low magic?
I mean, there's no direct plan to be like, yes, let's look at that stuff. No, there's no plan to look at it. I'm not sure. Is it really that big of a discrepancy between the two? I mean, I know that Curator Pentagram got nerfed and doesn't last as long, but you can reduce Serpent now with, you know, I forget what the skill is, the breaking the shield skill or whatever. So
it's a very specific name.
Yeah, Cathar Violet. There it is, right there. Yeah, like you can reduce Serpent times and nullify void. Yeah. So you can reduce it. There's things that counter Serpent. I mean, you gotta remember too, Serpent costs 10 power, so it's not a cheap thing to use. So there's ways to counter it.
And yes, Anniversary, or as it's called, Incharacter now, the Festival of the Creatrix is coming up. That is in October, and we will be announcing all of the plans for that next week.
I think you'll find that end zones will be an alternative to astral bashing. So that was kind of what the goal was, is a big high level end zone and end game placed for people to bash. So.
And yes, the Wayfair will be open, as it always is, during the Festival of the Creatrix. We have another 10 minutes we can stay if anyone else has any other questions. The festival name changed last year. It was all announced in character. It's always been awkward that we have all of these anniversary events, but obviously the concept of an anniversary has absolutely no relevance in character. So the Festival of the Creatrix is now is what is referred to in character. You will still find us saying anniversary out of character. Join late, and I'm not sure if I missed the question. Do we have any idea when Enzone will be released? We have answered that earlier, but quickly to repeat it, we're hoping this year. We have a timeline we're working to, but we're not releasing that timeline because we don't want to promise something and then not be able to keep it. So we're hoping, when it is ready is the real answer. But somewhere in the next few months. In terms of content for those not yet in Endgame, there's always content for those not yet in endgame. And we've been talking about sort of the big, wide-reaching development projects, but all of the patron groups right now are working on different things for the communes and cities, be they things that have been put through via patron request or things that they're coming up with on their own. We have a system now on the back end that we started at the beginning of this year and has gone really well, to empower patron teams to create things for their organizations, and that's gotten everyone some really cool things. So yes, in the sense that, well, the economy for a start. Okay, there's a couple of questions, maybe more for you, Orael, about whether someone oversees psychodrama, and how to suggest changes to that.
I mean, at this point, it'd be a reporting thing, right? Like you'd have to suggest during reports any changes. There's nobody who oversees it in particular at this point in time. More orders, releasing orders. You talk to your patron about that, but yeah, there's nobody who overlooks it. So the only really way to get a change in there would be to have a report at this point, because we just got priorities elsewhere. And same thing with an organized war games league. I think it'd be a great idea, to be honest. I think it could be fun. But I'm also worried that we kind of already have the ranked arena combat league and all that kind of other stuff. It'd just be another system that we'd have to plan out and make sure, it's not gamed as much as it can be. So, it's not something I'm opposed to, just not something that's on our plate right now.
In terms of order-specific psychodrama cards, custom icons are something that gods could technically ask for. It may be that some people don't realize they could do that, so I can remind them. It may be, and I think it's much more likely to be, that creating icons is fiddly and awkward, and it's much easier to create other fun things for you than it is to create psychodrama cards. So it's really probably that, rather than them not caring to. We've got just a few minutes left if anyone has any last minute questions, and we can go over those. Otherwise, you will have noticed possibly by now that we have been streaming sort of every other month, which is a thing we're vaguely trying to keep to. We're trying to make sure we do them semi-regularly for you, because we think it's been really useful for us, and it's been really nice for you as well. Is there anything you can do to make things better for us? Any bug category we want broken, or anything we think may cause lag? The existence of players causes lag. They're leaning on your enter key when you're particularly hitting a lot of command failure. That causes lag as well. I mean, lag things, we are steadily working through those. The SSC stuff is the stuff currently that's being worked on. I know there's some other stuff we've done behind the scenes that's boring. It changes things. In terms of making stuff better for us generally, and I'm thinking of doing a blog post about this in the future, actually, is sort of ways you can help Lusternia. Single biggest way you can help Lusternia: tell your friends about Lusternia and get them to come and try it out and see what they think of it. That's the best thing you can do to help us as a whole. Should you do anything else when bugs time out and you have to resubmit the bug? No, as long as you've resubmitted it, it's not a problem. Obviously, one of the reasons to get the bug numbers down is that things will be much less likely to time out, because they, will have a lower number, so we'll be able to get to them. Where are we as far as helping with combat spam, Orael?
I mean, we're doing pretty good so far. We've, the first big one was the GMCP changes that Ionar did, or ENR, however you say it. That was a huge cause of lag, and that's reduced stuff a lot. The SSC stuff helped, potentially reduced, calls of the SSC things by 90%. I think when I looked at it, and a lot of things that when we're adding them in, I'm adding them in with the expectation of reducing lag now. So recently we just did the routing and celerity changes. When we did that, it's probably a minor cause of lag, but it made things significantly faster on the end, so we're not calculating things as much. So it's definitely something that it's just going to be a continual project we work on. So something we just keep in mind as we go.
And what was the question I was looking at? Oh, things in the way in terms of marketing Lusternia better. Follow us on our social media accounts. Actually follow us. I know obviously a lot of people are in the unofficial Discord, which has a bot that sends all of our tweets straight away. And I can tell you the gremlins love that when they make a typo, and it goes there and they can't get rid of it. Actually follow us on Facebook, actually follow us on Twitter. Following us here also helps you more than it helps us, to be fair. Sharing things, liking things, it really makes a big difference in all of the insidious algorithms that work in the back there to get those things seen by other people. That's a really helpful thing that you can do, as well as just talking about it and engaging with us on that social media. But don't underestimate the power of the Twitter gremlins. In terms of TMS rankings, we do get people who come through TMS. I won't say it's a vast number, but it does help in some way. And it's nice to beat Aetolia.
Yeah. And yeah, as far as combining messages from stuff, that's definitely something I'm going to look at some point to see if it can help reduce lag. Because that was one of the suggestions when I was talking to other games, is combining messages and third-party messages from people. But the key there is we got to make sure that we're not taking away important messages that people need to say, people need to see in order to coordinate. So it's going to take some
melds got
time.
Compressed in the overhaul a bit already, didn't they? Not
yes
fully,
and no.
but...
I think some people, I think it depends on who you talk to. So I tried to compress them, but...
Okay, and that takes us to 8 o'clock. So thank you all very much for coming. It's been lovely to talk to all of you and to announce our awesome next project. We will be likely, if we want to seek specific feedback regarding the economy when we get to it, we'll do that at the time. But by all means, start talking about things. On the forums. Forums is much better for giving feedback than Discord, because Discord scrolls a lot. If you put things on the forums, we're much more likely to see it. So if you want to give any economy related feedback, that's the place to throw it. Otherwise, thank you all very much for coming. And we will see all of you again whenever our next stream may be. And we hope to give you some exciting news about Enzone in not too much longer. We'll see how it goes.
Yeah, thanks everybody.
Thanks. Bye guys.